minute warning.
Okay, great. Okay, so welcome to my presentation today. So I'll just, I guess you've already introduced it, so I'll just move along. Humans have a fundamental need to experience meaning in life. This is what Frankl called the will to meaning. However, what constitutes as a meaningful life varies dramatically from person to person, but scientists do generally agree that to experience life as meaningful, we need to experience it as being coherent, so it has some form of logical trajectory. We have a sense of goal-directedness, so this is purpose, and we need to feel as though our life is significant, so that our life matters. And there are many benefits to experiencing meaning in life, such as increased well-being and feeling connected. However, negative experiences threaten this sense of meaning, and when this happens, we're motivated to search for new meaning in life, because this is the fundamental will to meaning. So my project explored regret. Regret is a negative comparison-based emotion, so it's associated with upward counterfactual thinking. So this is thinking that our current situation would be better if only we had decided differently in the past. Studies, however, do suggest that people recognize regret as being a positive motivator for future behavioral guidance. So this is kind of the learning function of regret, where adaptive reflection leads to this corrective action. But nevertheless, regret is a state associated with existential threat and perceived meaninglessness. This is because to experience life as meaningful, humans need to feel connected in three general domains. So this is to the self, so this is kind of the sense of coherence, to the self in relation to the external world, and then to the external world. So when we experience regret, we're aware of inconsistencies between the ideal and the actual self. We're aware that we may have not followed our beliefs and our values and our goals. So people cope with threats in a variety of ways. Coping is a process. It's a process of cognitive appraisal and continued reappraisal over time and in different stages. So there's generally two categories of coping. So we have problem-focused coping. So this aims at changing a behavior or a situation, and it's more commonly associated with adaptive strategies. People may also choose to engage in emotion-focused coping. So this is a type of coping that aims at regulating emotional distress, and people use this when it's not possible to change a behavior or a situation and thus change the outcome. The goal here is to maintain an internal equilibrium. So then for my project, because I conceptualized regret as being an existential emotion, I looked at the meaning maintenance model and what it says about how people may attempt to cope with meaning loss. And so this model states that people are motivated to restore lost meaning in one of three ways. So we can reaffirm alternative meaning frameworks, we can reinterpret the events so that any inconsistencies disappear, or we can revise what we perceive to be meaningful so that we can accommodate any inconsistency. So then in my first study, I asked, do people reaffirm alternative meaning frameworks? In particular here, I chose to explore the belief in free will, because the belief in free will is a source of meaning for people. It's also a problem-focused strategy because it offers people the opportunity for corrective action in the future. You know, people can think that, okay, well, I made this bad decision in the past and I regret it, but in the future I can learn from it because I have this freedom. Furthermore, belief in free will is also associated with responsibility. People who feel personally responsible for their outcomes are more likely to believe in free will because this allows them to affect change. And then in study 2, I explored, well, how maybe does denial affect the relationship between state regret and meaning search? Denial here is an emotion-focused coping strategy. It can be associated with adaptive self-deception because it temporarily distorts reality so that people can cope with the negative outcomes. And it does this by altering the significance of the experience. So study 1, I hypothesized that trait regret leads people to reaffirm their free will beliefs via search for meaning. So I had 203 participants. Their ages range from 19 to 76. So in this correlational study, I administered 4 scales. So I administered the 5-item regret scale, the 10-item meaning in life questionnaire scale. So this examines presence of meaning in life and search for meaning in life. I also administered the 7-item belief and free will scale and the 28-item brief cope scale. So this measures 14 different coping strategies. And then I conducted a mediation analysis. So I had 2 mediation analyses in this first study. So for the first one, I included regret as my predictor, meaning search was the mediator, and the outcome variable was belief and free will. So there was a small indirect effect of regret on belief and free will. However, this went in the opposite direction. So the direct effect indicated that when people experience regret, they decrease their belief in free will. So then in the second mediation, I was interested to see, well, okay, what role might denial play in this association between regret and search for meaning? And so here I again found an indirect effect of regret on meaning search, which is common in the literature, and this was mediated by denial. So this is just a quick look at the correlations from my first study. So here you can see that search for meaning and denial are moderately correlated with regret, and presence of meaning in life and belief in free will are inversely correlated. So then in my second study, I focused on the second mediation of study 1. So this was the mediating role of denial between regret and meaning search. This second study was experimental, and it investigated the role between state regret, whereas the first one was trait regret. So I had 140 participants, and their ages were 19 to 74. And so to induce regret in this study, my experimental condition were tasked to describe one of their biggest regrets in life, or a day in their life where they had experienced intense regret. And then the control condition were asked to describe a mundane experience or an average everyday experience for them. And I also administered the 4 scales from study 1. And again, I conducted a mediation analysis to see what were the underlying processes. So the regret manipulation was successful. So there was a very dramatic difference between the experimental and control condition on experiences of regret. And this is the conceptual representation of the mediation model. So here we can see that regret triggers a search for meaning, and this is mediated by denial. So what's interesting here is that denial is a process by which people reduce significance of the meaning of their experiences. And I also would point there to the B coefficient for the relationship between denial and search for meaning. It's very large. So then just to go through a quick discussion, so I wanted to explore why people don't reaffirm their free will beliefs. And so here, like, I would point to the fact that we explored life regrets, and life regrets are often impossible to correct. So time is seen to be continuous and irreversible. Choices once made are made forever, and a second chance cannot be the same as the first. So I think people are aware of this, and decreasing your belief in free will also allows you to decrease the personal responsibility you have over your past decisions. And so people are more likely to choose denial. So because denial allows you to decrease the significance of the regret, you can revise the meaningfulness of the experience, and it immediately helps you to reduce any psychological distress you feel for the regretted experience. But it's important to note that while it's adaptive initially, over time this can become maladaptive and lead to more negative outcomes. So just then quickly some limitations of my study. So my studies were correlational in design, so while this is informative, it doesn't tell us the causal relationship between our variables. Furthermore, we didn't ask participants how long it's been since you experienced the regret, and the literature shows that there's a temporal pattern to regret, and people can experience regret intensity. This fluctuates over time depending on the type of regret. Also in study 2, there was no difference between the control and experimental condition on the search for meaning variable. So this definitely needs to be explored more. And I would argue that some of the reasons for this was that there were confounding variables at play. So a lot of people in the control condition, when they were asked to describe a mundane experience of their life, They commonly refer to their lives as being repetitive, that they were boring. They felt like they had wasted their lives and that they had wasted some of the opportunities they had in the past. And these are definitely things that can trigger a search for meaning in life. So yeah, thank you for listening.